Good morning, all. Today we are going to start our interactive series. In the past 1.5 years, we have done major psychological conditions that can be of benefit to the clients as well as the wider public. Today we are initiating the next step of interacting with the viewers. All this while we have closed this comments as well as we have closed the further interaction, keeping a particular aspects in mind, mainly for the benefit of the clients during this corona period, where there is a restriction on the time, where most of the counseling sessions are online. So in order to give an added benefit, we have done these videos. Now we are moving on to the next step of trying to interact with them. A lot of queries that one has when they are looking into the content of the videos. So in order to address that aspect, we are starting with our interactive series. Today's topic that we have selected is on handling negative emotions and thought process. So here mainly the interaction is in English, and those who want to send their queries, they are open to type them in the chat box, and then we will pick up some of the questions. This interactive session is mainly for an hour's duration. Following the topic discussion, we'll have probably 35 to 40 minutes for the question and answer session. So we'll pick up those questions that will be of useful to the major public, and covering common conditions or common doubts, and then that's how we have planned. And then starting with our today's topic, handling negative emotions and thought process. With the modern lifestyle, a lot of changes that are happening very rapidly in terms of the food habits, in terms of the work habits, in terms of the family interaction patterns. So a lot of generation of these negative emotions is invariable. So here, even just to have a meal together as a family is also coming to such an effort. So a lot of these factors, daily factors of more on the mechanization and working in an isolated settings, decreased mobility and decreased direct face-to-face interaction with the people, all these bringing in a lot of loneliness, meaninglessness, and isolation in our lives. So looking at specific conditions which we have already addressed in many videos related to clinical depression, anxiety, personality disorders. So I'll very briefly touch upon those areas. Those who are interested can look into those specific videos in detail, which is available on the website psychotherapyhyd.com. Here I briefly mention and will focus mainly on the major aspects of interpersonal conflicts being the major generation of these negative emotions, and then look into the handling aspects. Then the session is open for question and answers. Here, mainly looking at some of the important conditions like clinical depression. So clinical depression is considered to be as the common cold of all the psychological conditions. In fact, 75% of the hospitalization is because of these clinical depression, so widespread, and more so it is in women that the depression is hitting very hard, with more and more complex lifestyles and career choices, and a lot of multitasking that is happening. So a lot of stressors increasing in the modern woman. So leading to a lot of depression as well. So generally, when we say depression, it is most of us has at some point or the other has gone through these depressive kind of symptoms, being tearful and very low, and not wanting to interact with anyone, shut down with all the social interactions, and sometimes when the depression becomes so overwhelming that you don't even want to kind of attend to your own biological hunger and sleep needs, sitting in one place for hours together, entertaining negative thoughts, sometimes leading to as severe as self-harming kind of thought process. So in clinical depression, the major aspect here is that the kind of negative thought process that happens within oneself, with the environment around them, or about their future becomes habitual over a period of time. And then even though the person is out of depression, the habitual pattern of negative thinking has become so automatic, giving rise to many automatic negative distortions. So if you look at some of the distortions, like selective abstraction is one of the cognitive distortion that is found in well established in clinically depressed clients, where they selectively look for the negative aspects in the environment, negating the positive aspects. So they are called selective abstraction. And one other condition called overgeneralization. Here, taking one particular instant and then making sweeping conclusions like everything is negative or everyone is negative kind of a picture. So personalizing is one another kind of cognitive distortion, where they take the personal responsibility for things that they are not responsible, ending up into a kind of guilt and looking at themselves as failures. So these kind of cognitive distortions, well established in clinical depression, will become a habitual pattern in spite of the person coming out of the depressive episode after a couple of months, either by spontaneous or by some professional help. But the negative thought patterns that they have set in will continue. So this is one of the important aspects. And the anxiety conditions are another major areas where a lot of negative emotions and negative thoughts, such as fear, such as tension, and a lot of avoidance, that usually it is the basic survival mechanism for all of us. When there is a danger, when there is a real perceived danger in the environment, like say for example we are crossing the road and an unexpected speeding vehicle coming in our way, the immediate response is to kind of jump back and protect ourselves, which is considered to be a kind of positive anxiety that is helping us to handle the situation. But here, mainly in anxiety situations, it is the not so unsafe situations where they are kind of a lot of misinterpreting the situation, or a lot of over assessment of the situations, ending up them into kind of avoiding the situations and fearing them, and then getting into a lot of panic kind of situations, a lot of generalized thinking over day-to-day conditions, the day-to-day routine that they have to go through is considered to be a kind of anxiety. So which we have widely covered: panic disorders, anxiety conditions, social phobias, agoraphobias, in different headings. When you look into the specific videos, you'll find more details. We are not getting into the details as of now. So the basic thing here is the negative assumptions, the negative assumptions where they have developed over a period of time because of their anxiety. Most of the times, the seeds of this anxiety are setting in their childhood, and then when they are exposed to specific stressors, they start surfacing and then start expressing all these anxiety situations. So that is one of the major clinical condition, anxiety, different anxiety states. Looking at personality disorders is another condition, a kind of group of conditions where it is considered to be like the person who is having this particular personality disorder. There are around 7 to 8 personality disorders, put under 3 clusters. Here again, the person who is having this particular personality, negative personality traits, don't look at themselves as having a problem. It is the family members or the close family members that they are living with them are mostly affected. So invariably, it poses very low motivation for the person who is having this personality disorder, and then use of a lot of defense mechanisms like a kind of a mask that we all use in different conditions, like trying to give reasons when you are unable to do a particular unable to meet a particular person. We try to rationalize why it happened, so and so. And when we are angry on in one situation where you can't express it directly, you try to show that anger like onto something more safer, like your children, or something like that, called projection. So a lot of defense mechanisms one uses as a mask in order to kind of protect themselves from these hurt, from the guilt that they have to go through, from the shame they have to go through. And it is very difficult to break these kind of defenses unless they are willing to or acknowledge or become aware that I want to make changes and become a better person, which is very less likely as they grow in their age. With the younger age groups, to some extent we can work out, but once they are established into an adulthood, it is usually the family members who are more affected than the person who is having the problem in personality disorders. The major area where a lot of negativity is generated, both negative emotions like anger and sadness and frustration, and a lot of negative thought process is generated, is the interpersonal interactions, especially at a family level. So where the interdependence and the emotional dependence on the family members is one of the area where a lot of games, manipulations, a lot of reasoning, rationalization, a lot of emotions run through, bringing in a lot of negativity. Say, hypothetically, if you look at some of the common examples, like say, for example, if there is a couple who has some marital relational strains, where they are unable to solve, and it is becoming more and more stressful for them to handle, can be diverted onto the children in terms of either over-involving in the child care, or sometimes blaming the child as a reason for their problems, those kind of things. A lot of manipulations can happen. Like, say, for example, if someone in the family is a very kind of short-tempered person, and then where there can be another family member who is a very provocative kind of person, and then they know that if I do a particular kind of action, or if I say something, that the short-tempered person will flare up, and then they deliberately try to provoke by bringing in that kind of situation. And then the short-tempered person might, flare up in, and a lot of emotional battles happen. The relationships become very stressful, and then a lot of guilt runs in, and this becomes like a cycle. So the reasoning in family relationship is always a circle, circular thing. What started, when started, how it ended is very difficult to pinpoint here. So a lot of these family kind of interactions can bring in invariably a lot of negatives generated. And the other less important areas like obsessive compulsive disorders, where on a daily basis they are kind of come up with a lot of negative thought process related to spirituality, related to cleanliness, related to kind of keeping things in order, and so on. So which I have again explained in the OCD video. And other conditions like chronic alcoholism and impulse control or aggressive problems. So these are all, most of the conditions are, make the possibility of these negative emotions more and more into a habitual pattern. So looking at the handling, how to handle these negative emotions. So mainly the handling again depends on specific conditions. In depression, basically we look at it more on structuring their daily activity, bringing in more positivity by increasing the productivity level on a daily basis, focusing on identifying their distorted negative assumptions kind of thinking, and then helping them to restructure them into more a positive kind of thinking at a clinical level, at a counseling level. And anxiety conditions, again, for each specific anxiety conditions, working on their coping mechanisms, and then helping them to expose to those actively avoided situations because of their anxiety, and also restructuring the negative emotions, negative assumptions, like say a word on the negative assumptions, like here the person might have a negative assumption, like it's like a belief, a negative belief. So if the person has a negative belief saying that I'm a boring person, whenever there is a situation in a kind of interaction, interpersonal interaction, if the other person is not saying hello to them, and then they think that, oh, I'm a boring person, so this person is avoiding me. So they come to these kind of conclusions, and then it becomes a kind of generation of a lot of negative interactions and negative kind of exchanges that happen in the interpersonal area. So working on these negative assumptions through specific scientific procedures is what we do in these anxiety conditions. Personality disorders, as I told, that their motivation level again depends on at what age they are clinically coming for counseling, and then how motivated they are, and how self-aware they are. A lot of other factors influence, and then a lot of work with the family members is also in progress with these personality disorders. The more longer, the more aged the person is, the less likely that they might mend with the therapies or even medical psychiatric medication. So the main focus being again on the interpersonal conflicts, how to handle these negative emotions and negative thinking at an interpersonal level. So this is where we will focus a little more. And then a lot of, hopefully a lot of people might be having questions about these interpersonal area. So I'll try to bring in a little more focus on this particular aspect. So how to handle the negativity that comes the interpersonal area or social interactions. So it again depends on at what developmental stage the family is in. Let us say if it is at a couple level, couple level where it's only the couple just married or few years of marriage, where there is a lot of relational issues, where the motivation is at their high, and then they are willing to work through their relationship. So a lot of open communication, and then problem solving, and then trying to work out with or without the help of the professional counselors. And again, the kind of environment that is there with the young children, a lot of changes that has to bring in a lot of disciplinary changes, as well as the environmental restructuring that has to happen with the parental help. And when it comes to teenagers, mainly the most toughest task, not only for the parents, even for us as well. So building this trust in them, trying to bring in the trust, and then going with their own understanding, trying to be more open to their opinions, and then helping them in a much more friendlier way, rather than taking a different approach is more important, rather than the way that we deal with young children or adults. So here, again, adolescent is an age where the personality is unfolding, and careful handling of the emotions as well as negative thought process that are generated, the kind of culture, the kind of disciplinary kind of environment, everything matters here. So coming to an adult, the least motivation, if there are the family members are mostly at an adult age, near adult, where they are going to sooner or later going to function at an independent level. Here again, there is less scope for change, because the interdependence comes down a lot, and then the motivation is very low, because they are going to start functioning on their own, maybe as a family, maybe as an individual adult. So again, the major resources of working with these interpersonal interactions at a family level is the kind of motivation they have, as well as the affection and love that they have, and the way that they have handled different stressors at different stages in their life. All these bring in a kind of based on that the kind of resources that we can generate. So generally, when it comes to adults in the family, usually the motivation for change is very less. Ultimately, the crux of any relationship is being able to be adaptive, being able to accommodate and make adjustments with each other, and working through the problem area, and trying to bring in the togetherness, which is here plays a major role. So here, the flexibility that happens and the optimism, the most important aspect is the optimism and willingness towards changing towards whatever is better for them, and able to let go the old baggages and trying to look forward for a better relationship is all very important aspects here. At an individual level, most of these family situations may not come to the clinical attention in such conditions where when at a family level, trying to channelize these negative emotions towards something that brings in a positivity. It's more like replacing the negativity with more of a positive kind of activities, be it nourishing interested hobbies, or making a little more productive activity schedule on a daily basis, focusing more your energies on trying to bring in more productivity. It can be like, let us say that homemakers, where these days They do a lot of extra kind of activities like terrace gardening, or a kind of baking activities, trying to set up a small online kind of shops. So all these things can help them to kind of put their negative energies towards something more productive and more positive. Nourishing their hobbies is one other way, especially when you are depressed. A lot of focus on distracting these negative thought process and trying to kind of focus more on the productivity activities need not be something major. It can be like, trying to do a little bit of sketch of your own negative emotions, trying to ventilate your own feelings, or trying to put down your thought process and try to look at them as to how and what. It's more like acts as, expressing your feelings in a more safer way. The most important aspect is when you are in this vulnerable stage of negative thought process and negative going through the negative emotions, with whom you are sharing is also very important. The person that you are sharing should be able to, be someone who can handle them more carefully, equipped to handle more carefully, other than the professional persons, within your own friendships, within your own family members, with whom you are more confident, where you can share, and then the other person can help you in a mature way to handle the situation, will be of a great help. So other than that, if all these things are not of much help, kindly try to be open to take some professional help or some professional advice. So this is what I wanted to share in today's session. Hope this would have given some opening for the listeners to kind of start working on their whatever the questions or whatever the queries that they have. Now the session is open for the questions. Hello. So you have heard the brief introduction to the topic, and then there are not much questions, but I can try to look at some of the common questions that usually come up when a topic like this is there. So there's some question that here: how to face negative feelings coming from the close family members. So here, when it comes to close family members, so since you are related to the person closely, uh, the negative feelings might be having some basis. So the first and important aspect is to have some introspection as to from where these negative feelings are cropping up. Is it anything that has happened from where the negative feelings are coming in? Some amount of introspection will help yourself to look into the possibilities from where this negativity is coming. So if you feel more or less that not much is done from your side, then you can look into uh, the kind of situation, or try to openly communicate with the family member as to where things have gone, not gone, or what is the area of friction, and then from where this generation of these negative feelings or thought process is coming in. Sometimes when it comes to close family members, there can be a lot of jammed up emotions over years, and then the day-to-day expression of the negative feelings could be as a kind of, you know uh, unearthing of all these jammed up feelings. So if there is a lot of baggage that you are holding, if there is any relational strain happening, look at that more closely. An open discussion or open communication is the best way of, looking into how to handle or problem solve or resolve the issues.
if the other family member is not open to do these kind of constructive ways, then you need to look into how to handle these negative feelings or thought process on your own. Like I said in the brief introduction, that a lot of channelizing of these negative feelings can happen by looking that or turning that negative energy into more positive by putting your energies into the career or something that you feel more productive, and that will help you to handle these feelings and rechannelize the negative energy into something more positive. And then this can be a process where continuously you can look into the ways of putting channelizing your energies. But however, since you are going to live with this family member, at some point or the other you need to address these kind of feelings and then come to some understanding or some solution. A lot of times when it comes to family relationships, a lot of accommodations and readjustments need to happen. So in this process, if a lot of adjustments and readjustments has to happen, whether the adjustments are happening only from your side or even the other person is equally open for this. So all these factors need to be kept into consideration. And if at all the criticism or the negativity continues in spite of all these efforts, so some amount of ignoring of these negativity and then trying to only respond to the positive communication can be other way of handling these negativity. So and then also trying to reduce your reactions whenever there is this kind of hostile or negative kind of emotions coming in. And then you'll have to look at from a more long term perspective as to how you can um, work on your relationship. So looking at the second one, how to control negative thoughts. So the self control is the control that we need to look at here. So when it comes to controlling the negative thoughts, most of the times these negative thoughts or negative emotions can become habitual patterns, which might be having a basis with the previous experiences or past experiences. These control systems are usually when you recognize or when you acknowledge that from where they are coming, and I mean, what are the things that they are springing from. Did I resolve the issues, or did I tuck it under the rug and I just trying to move on without resolving the issues? So the more you try to do this kind of unresolved kind of issues and then not really trying to solve the problems actively, so the more and more negative thoughts keep coming in, and then the control process is not something that it becomes so automatic that the negative thoughts can become more and more habitual. So in order to bring some control on these negative thoughts, you need to first acknowledge from where they are coming. Is it something specific, or is it coming from a general kind of a lot of things that has happened, or is it something that you can trace from where these negative thoughts are generating, and is there a way that you can work through or problem solve or actively resolve the issues? But sometimes these negative thoughts can be from something irreparable. When such thoughts, like say for example, you may be having some negative kind of relationship with someone very close to you. The person may not be alive anymore, but then the negative thoughts might still be bothering. In such cases, it's important that for you to accept that the person is no more, and then these negative thoughts have no meaning, and then you need to start working through by kind of remembering the positive experiences that you had with that particular person, and and then try to replace them. So the only way to take out some negativity is to replace it the positive. How to replace, bringing in some replacement of these thoughts, positive thoughts. So again, the channelizing, where you can try to keep yourself into a more productive activity, and then try to have much more meaningful kind of routine, try to bring in more meaning into your day to day life, so that you don't have to have much time or aimless time where you can sit and entertain these thoughts, or work on their thoughts. So the control is mainly on, if they are continuously happening, then if the relationship, is it coming from a relationship, what is the source? You need to trace out the source from where it is coming, and then try to look at, is there a way to fix this negativity? If the control factor or the relationship is no more, then you need to look at it more, a kind of accept it, and then try to channelize these negative energies into something more positive. So sometimes it also can happen that there can be irreparable losses. A lot of negativity comes from, say, business loss, or loss of prestige, or loss of social status, a lot of uh, loud uh, loss of people whom you are close to. So how to work out these kind of losses? So the first step is towards accepting and acknowledging that at a conscious level, yes, the damage has already happened. There is a financial loss, and then there is a loss of prestige. What is more important is to look at it as to how I can gain back the energies, how I can get back, and then start propping up, and start looking at how to, uh, come back to the position where may not be the similar position, or slow and steady how I can work on this. So a lot of time acknowledging is more important, and moving on, and from where, what mistakes have been done, and from where this loss is coming up. Is there a way that I can recover if it is coming from, say, from a business kind of financial, or a material kind of a loss? So material loss can always be regained at a later point when you look at the reasons for this loss, or you can always put your energies into some other area where you might try your luck into some other material gain. But when it comes to interpersonal loss, it can be something more long term and permanent. In such cases, it could be kind of a divorce, or a separation, or loss can be because of moving apart, or it can be because of the death. All these things where you need to understand that at some point or the other, this loss is something that each one of us need to face, and then we need to work through as to uh, uh, remembering the pleasant time that you have spent with them. And then yes, there may be negativity associated with them as well, but when the person is no more, still brooding over this negativity makes no sense. So try to look at more into the positive aspects of it, and then try to see how you can kind of accept the fact, and then see if this loss is helping you, or trying to look a little more deeper into your own self, and is it an opening for some other new experience. Look into a little more retrospective, and then try to reflect on uh, whether it is opening the door for, say, if you are a religious person or a spiritual person, is it something the suffering that you have gone through is opening, the pain is opening another way of coming close to your spirituality, or any such channel is opened. So in such cases, is there a way um, that I can focus on, and then rebuilding a new area to, you know, alternate or replace the loss. So, looking at another question here, due to COVID, can a person have depression setback? Yes, definitely. Any illness, or even for that matter, if you look at just a fever, or a cold that we have, where our routine is being disturbed, it is definitely possible that we feel very low and depressed, and then until we get back to that routine again, it keeps um, bothering us, that we feel very low, and then we will be desperately looking back at our regaining back at our day-to-day life. So depression can again depend on how you are looking at this, be it COVID or any other infection, or sometimes it can be a long-term illness, like say a diagnosis of say cancer, or having some heart element, where you may have to look at it as a diabetes, for that matter, very common condition, diabetes, where you need to live with that for some time and then accept it. So in such case, some amount of depression will definitely set in, and then we need to actually understand that this is something that I need to go through, and then if it is like say a COVID condition, you know that it is something temporary, and then within a week or two you are going to move out of it, and then things are going to go back to a normal situation. But if it is a long term condition like a diabetes, or a heart element, or something to do with a kind of long term chronic kind of health issues, in such conditions, accepting and then see what is the best way of um, you know becoming symptom free, and then maintaining yourself in a healthy way, that is more important, rather than only crying over the broken milk. It is important that you need to look at it as more, how to handle it both medically as well as psychologically. So depression is something that you need to kind of look at it more a kind of temporary kind of situation, and then getting back and then putting your energies back into something more productive, be it talking to someone very close to you, expressing your feelings. It works like this. Let us say that when your house is filled with a lot of unused material and a lot of clutter, what do we generally do on a festival day, or some Sankranti or some Diwali? You try to clean up the house, and then you try to see what is required, what is not required, is there anything to be replaced, anything to be discarded. Similarly, one need to also look at these negative thoughts, whether they are arising out of depression or any illness, or whether out of any anxiety, like different conditions which I have mentioned in the topic. Any kind of negativity that is coming in, is there a way that I can clean up my negative thought process or negative emotions, like the way that I clean up my house when it is filled with the junk or filled with unused kind of material. So this cleaning process has to happen at different levels, whether it is the day to day life that is affected with your depression, or because is it coming from different kind of past kind of experiences which are adding one over the other. So you have to look at the source from where the depression is coming, and you need to address. If it is interpersonal, you need to try and address it at the earliest, so that it doesn't get jammed up or resurfaces again and again, especially if you are living with the same person, be it your spouse or be it your parent or a sibling. There is a chance that if you don't resolve that, it can crop up in your day-to-day interactions. So it is always, important to identify the source and then try to work out what can be done practically, and then channelize that negative energy into something more productive and positive. So this is what can help you to some extent. But in any case, if none of these are at your individual level, self control level, are of not much use, always be open to take some professional help, so that someone who is out there trying to help you out in a much more objective way, and then that might help you to gain your strengths back. So, looking at some of the other possible questions, um, when negativity is coming from places like social interactions or where you are working outside, how to handle this negativity. Yes, when it comes to family members, there is an emotional connection that you hold. So the effect is a little more stronger. The intensity, how you are affected, can be much more stronger. It is also important that you need to look at when it comes to outsiders, or when it comes to people that you are working with. Usually the relationship is much more formal relationship, and then um, you need to also understand that if there is not much emotional connection, the the way that you have to take it is more from the perspective of more objectively and practically how to solve. If it is related to the friction is coming out of any undone work or unappreciated work, you need to sit with the person, be it a boss or a higher authority. Sit with the person and try to openly communicate, and then try to ask for suggestions and be open to learn. That is more important, where you can try to reduce the negativity. And sometimes if you feel that negativity is coming not much to do with any of your work, in spite of your best efforts, there are still possible negativity coming from the work area. You need to some amount of ignoring, some amount of trying to do your best might help in order to recover these negative feelings. Always trying to focus on what gives you the productivity and builds your positivity. Focus on that rather than trying to repair what you don't have control on. So, looking at a kind of continuation question related to the COVID, can relaxation technique help during the post-COVID period? So relaxation has nothing much to do with the COVID, because post-COVID generally the kind of symptoms might leave the person a little more tired and little more exhausted and lost energies. So the relaxation is more in terms of, let us say, a light walk, or something to do with a little bit of nature walk, kind of uh, you know um, kind of situations, or just trying to share your feelings with someone close to you, or taking a little more rest, or taking a short break from the work might be of much more help. So relaxation, if you are looking at it as a professional way, doing a yoga or something of surya namaskaras or something more exhaustive, can also you can wait until you regain your energies back, and then you can start them. They are more useful. The relaxation techniques are much more useful for the anxiety condition rather than depressed, because your energy levels are very low post depression, and then it may not be very much recommended for the relaxation, professional relaxation techniques. A small nature walk, or a little bit of breathing might help you to regain the positivity, and trying to slowly gain back your energies and get back to the routine much be of much more help here. So, looking at maybe one more question we can try to cover in the uh, available time. Why is that suffering happens to only some, and uh, they seem to, some of them seem to suffer with no happiness ever in their lives. It appears that they are born to only suffer. One negative experience after one negative experience after, they seem to, some of the people seem to have this kind of pattern, and it always poses the question as to why me, why is it that I am the only person who is suffering while the whole world is happy around. So when it comes to the continuous suffering, it also need to look into a little more deeper and self reflection as to, is it something to do with your own nature, is it giving you the suffering, or is the suffering happening because you are touching on to the wrong side of the relationships, or you're not really being sensitive to your own self, or is there something that is not going well, a little bit of time off, and then look at back as to from where this continuous suffering is coming. So acknowledgement of the suffering is the first step towards resolving. So from where this suffering is coming, you need to look at, is it a financial loss, is it something unrealistic kind of goals that you have set for yourself, which is meeting with some kind of barriers always, or is it something that is the suffering is also an indication a little at a higher level, is it something trying to indicate you that you need to look the life beyond what you are at this point of time. Like, let us say that if someone is having a special child, or if someone has to take care of a kind of long term ill family member, bedridden kind of thing, so it can be a little more stressful for the person who is functional and handling all kinds of activities single handed might become much more stressful in such conditions. So you need to look for some amount of help. Is there a professional way that I can look at, and then is there a way that I can reduce some amount of, or you must have sketched some plan for yourself, be it a career goal, or be it something that you want to kind of planned long term, and then an adverse situation in your life is not really helping you to move towards the goal. In that case, it's also important to relook at your goals, or is there a way that I can focus more on handling the present situation, and then see, once this present situation comes to some understanding, is there a way that I can relook into the goal or alternate my goals. So the suffering always teaches us some kind of lesson, which how open you are for that. Like I said in most of my previous videos, if there is a problem, the way that you look at the problem, whether you look at the problem as a growth point, be it a relationship or be it anything for that matter in your career, whenever there are problems coming up, if you are looking at it as a kind of a growth point, then you look forward and then try to see how you can work through that and try to resolve it, or try to handle the situation in a much more practical way, at an emotional level, at a kind of practical level. But if you look at that I am the only one suffering, and try to end up into self pity, or trying to look at it more like I am the only sufferer and the whole world is happy while I am only the suffering person, then you will only end up being into self pity and trying to look for sympathy from outside, which may or may not be of much help to you to come out of the suffering. So you need to look for something more long term, and then try to take the lesson. Is there a kind of relooking at yourself, your goals, or is it opening some other door for you to towards becoming more mature, or some such things might help you to look at it from much more mature perspective. So this is all for today. Thank you so much for the questions, and then we will meet again in the next month, and then any one of you can suggest the topics that can be of practical value to you, so that we can prepare the interactions around that. Thank you so much. Thank you.